Unsolved.
JonBenet Ramsey case, what happened in the night. We begin this video when Patsy had yelled for John, and she said to John, "She's gone. Somebody has taken her. There's a note downstairs. She's gone. My baby is gone." Patsy rushed into Burke's room, flipped on the lights, looked around, and rushed out. According to Burke, his mom was going psycho. She was saying, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh," and she was out of breath. And he could hear his mom and dad talking downstairs. He could hear his father trying to calm down his mother. And he was worried, and he wondered what they were talking about, if something was stolen or something was lost, or if it really was that JonBenet was missing. And John was in the hallway just outside the kitchen, and he had laid out the 3-page ransom note on the floor so he could read it quickly. And the note didn't seem like your average everyday run-of-the-mill ransom note. Like, don't alert bank authorities. Don't tamper with the money. We are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. And at this time, Patsy called 911. She asked for the police, then gave her address, and then said, "We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please." And when asked to explain what was going on, she said, there's a note left and our daughter's gone." Patsy called Barbara Fernie, and John Fernie answered the phone, and she told them to hurry up and come over. "It's emergency. We need you." Patsy called Priscilla White, and Cliff Gaston answered, and he handed the phone over to Priscilla, and she screamed at Priscilla to hurry, come over, we need you. At approximately 6 a.m., Boulder police officer Rick French knocked on the Ramsey's door, and Patsy answered the door with her makeup done and hair. At a later time, Burke was asked, "Who is the next person you saw?" And he said,
"The policeman going into my room. No, it was either my dad coming in and turning off the lights, or a policeman coming into my room and looking around. Wait, it was my dad coming into my room and turning off the lights. And then there was the policeman coming in and looking around with a flashlight."
The first friend to arrive was John Fernie, who lived about 15 or 20 minutes away. And he went to the back door, which was a glass door, and he stated that he could see the ransom note. It was upside down, but yet he still read it, and he knew something strange was going on. And then he went around to the front of the house and was let in. At approximately 6:20 a.m., Fleet and Priscilla White arrived at the Ramsey house. Now around 6:30 a.m., Fleet White went down into the basement and looked around. And he went to the cellar door and he opened it, and he couldn't see anything. He tried to turn on the light, but it didn't know where it was, and then he closed the door. Approximately between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m., John Ramsey called Mike Archuleta, the pilot, to let him know that they wouldn't be coming, but he had to leave a message for him. And then he called Rod Westmoreland about arranging to get the money, and he had to leave a message for him because he was in Mississippi at the time. Then around 7 a.m., Barbara Fernie showed up, and then the Reverend Roland Overstock arrived. Approximately 7:15, it was decided that Burke would go over to Fleet White's house to be with Little Fleet and the relatives that were there at Fleet's house. Patsy spent most of the morning in the sunroom, praying and clutching a cross. Now, sometime that morning, there was a discussion about the ransom note with John Ramsey, John Fernie, Fleet White, and a police officer. And some of the comments and questions about the note were the $118,000 wasn't a large amount and an odd amount to be asking for. And then they noticed that it was addressed to Mr. Ramsey, but closed with John. And they felt that the person knew John well. And they also discussed if the ransom call was going to take place that day between 8 and 10 a.m. or the following day between 8 and 10 p.m. Now, during John Ramsey's police interview, he told them that he went down to the basement that morning and pushed the window closed and latched it. But the thing is, he couldn't have gone there before the police arrived. So there's only 2 time periods that he could have went down to the basement, either before the 8 to 10 possible ransomer calling, or after, from 10 till 12, say. Now, sometime in the morning, the people that John Ramsey called and left messages for returned his call. Like Mike Archuleta called, and Rod Westmoreland called and said that he arranged for the credit line on John Ramsey's credit card. And I'm not sure if John Andrew called, but he switched his flight from going to Minneapolis to going to Denver. Now, reportedly, at 8:10, Detective Linda Arndt arrived, and she talked to John Ramsey about taking the call from the kidnapper, that John should ask to speak to JonBenet, that he should stay on the line as long as possible, and request until 5 p.m. for them to arrange to get the ransom amount. Between 8 and 10 a.m., the Ramseys did receive several telephone calls, but none from a ransomer. They received a call from Westmoreland twice about the ransom money, and then one from Shirley Brady from Atlanta, and they did receive one hang-up phone call. Now, that morning there were several police officers in the Ramseys' house. There was Officer Veach, there was Detectives Linda Arndt and Fred Patterson, and a few other detectives, and there were the 2 victim advocates. But after the ransom call failed to come in, police personnel left, and by 12 o'clock, Detective Linda Arndt was the only officer left. Now, around 1 p.m., after Linda Arndt suggested that John and Fleet look around the house for any signs of anything misplaced, John and Fleet went down to the basement, and they looked around, and then John went to the train room and showed Fleet the window. And then after showing Fleet the window, John went to the boiler room and to the wine cellar door and opened that and found JonBenet's dead body. And now I listed these 5 contradictions. So number 1, the ransom note, yet the body is left in the basement. So it doesn't make sense that there would be a call for a ransom, but yet her body was left in the house. And 2, JonBenet's body hidden in the wine cellar. Like, is it really hidden? At first, when you learn about this case, you might think it is hidden. But then when you know that the Ramseys stored their Christmas trees in the wine cellar and the presents in the wine cellar and Fleet White went to the wine cellar, that room isn't really hidden. And so anybody putting a body in there, it's odd that they would think that no one would find it. So number 3 here, don't call the authorities and get the cash. Yet the body isn't really hidden. And so the ransom note has all these threats. She dies, she dies, she dies. But they're going to find her body and then get the cash from the bank. How can you go and get the cash from the bank if you've already found her dead body? Number 4, JonBenet's body is wrapped in a white blanket. Yet the killer strangled her to death with a garrote and maybe smashed her head in with some metal pipe or something. So how do you explain that contradiction? And number 5, Patsy and John really don't look for JonBenet that morning. Now, Patsy went into the basement on other days. The night before, she was wrapping presents in the basement. She had been in the basement and the painting. She did her painting in the basement, or she had the supplies in the basement. And so that room was not some mystery room to her. She knew very well about the wine cellar. And John, of course, knew about the wine cellar. So I find it very odd that neither one of them would have looked for JonBenet sometime that morning down in the basement. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. It'll be fun. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you probably on New Year's Eve.